Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and it's time for the 2018 end of the year Steam wishlist cleanup. Today we'll be looking at games that start with O, so I'm going to scroll up as we talk about what we're doing here. Basically, I have a Steam wishlist that is what I use as a curated list of games that I might want to cover on my on my YouTube channel, or sometimes just games I want to own in general. But what has been happening is every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday I have been streaming Hearthstone and talking about video game news, and more importantly looking at every single game that has come out for Steam, onto Steam. And if those new games met a certain level of quality, I would add them to the wishlist. I've now realized that was a huge mistake, and I should have been putting it on a secondary follow list, at least until a game has a certain threshold of reviews. So, as you can see here, there's not a lot of those. This is going to be a shorter one, which is much appreciated, honestly, because there's been, for instance, In was pretty long, and there's been some very, very long episodes here. So the first one we're looking at is Okami Academy of Spells and Sorceries, which is a sexual content nudity game. We're starting with the perverted games immediately. We're going to be looking for red flags, and I'm going to use this game as an example. I've decided to look at some of these games and make sure none of the screenshots are too offensive. Sometimes they are. Steam is kind of new to letting these adult games onto their store, and they haven't fully figured it out yet as far as what they want. So one of the red flags we'll be looking for is it rated positively, and does it have 25 or more reviews in this section, which means that the game was bought directly through Steam and not activated via key or in some other way potentially given away for free. If we get desperate, we will look at the developer and publisher list and see if a game is in good company or bad company, in the sense that has the developer or publisher published several other good or bad games. This one, in all honesty, is going to get removed from my wish list. I'm pretty sure. Not that all adult games get removed, just this one is not particularly that good looking visually, and we'll see that in the review in a second. We have basically every plugin available on Steam, on Chrome for Steam. I believe this is the Is There Any Deal plugin. It's not labeled, that tells like a historical low price. You can see that this game, which is I think a year old, yeah, it's a rather new game, has not been discounted any more than what it is right now, which is 50% off, and it's all discounted right now because of the Halloween sale. We'll look for other, we won't really compare the price too much unless we find out that the game is really short because of the How Long to Beat plugin. So if this game had some data on it and it said it took 30 minutes to beat the entirety of the game, $6.50 to play 30 minutes is rather expensive. We'll look for other red flags like languages. If we find the language is English and Russian only, or English and traditional simplified Chinese only, those games tend to be a higher chance of being troll games, although most troll games don't make it even past the first pass and onto the wish list. So here's an example. Because Steam has adopted a no censorship policy, this is a lot of these newer and older games now have patches that you can get directly from Steam. Steam before was saying no, you can't send people to your personal website or mention that some fully uncensored patch exists, but a lot of these games always did have the patches. You just had to Google it. But we've started off on an odd foot, certainly here. We have other plugins such as Steam Charts, which today's peak as far as people who have played this game is 2. The most number of people who have played this game at the same time is 17. Clearly it's not a very well played game. Steam Spy plugin that tells you the average playtime, and apparently they have no data whatsoever on this because its average playtime in total is 0 minutes and 0 hours. Maybe Steam Spy filters out some of that stuff, or maybe there's another reason for that. We won't really be using the performance survey, although that can be informative, particularly if you have a older, less capable computer. And then if a game is in question, we will come down to the reviews, and generally I ignore all positive reviews. I would say about 10 positive reviews is worth 1 negative review. So when I'm looking for are negative reviews that can be easily skimmed, this is a great example. The game has beautiful artwork and an alright soundtrack. Now for the negatives, I'll start with the fact that there are hardly any interaction in the game. Maybe I'm just spoiled by Telltale games, but there was barely ever a choice in dialogue. Very depressing. And finally, the content of the, let's say, adult situations are so mild the game could have passed with a T rating. Definitely not worth the money. It does certainly bring up a question, though. Was this person playing with the uncensored patch or not? Because that would be helpful information. And I guess inherently what I want for some of these games is the idea that games are sold uncensored. The storefronts should be censored, so the screenshots should have blurring and such. But then the game should be sold uncensored. And then for streamers like me, because unfortunately YouTube and Twitch have become increasingly conservative about things like this, there needs to be like a patch to censor a game, and maybe it's not really worth that effort. But also I could certainly see that there might be some more liberal parents out there who are cool with their kids playing a game that has sexual dialogue and maybe a little TNA that is exposed through skimpy clothing, but they don't want to get into the realm of hardcore pornographic imagery. So I could see like you have to play it with the censor patch on as an idea for some parents, although who knows. And by kids I mean like 17-year-olds, not 7-year-olds. More negative reviews. I really don't need to see them. Inherently, there are several genres of games that I need to go back and do another pass on my wish list and decide whether or not I'm going to play any of them whatsoever. Adult games, visual novels, RPGs, JRPGs are all different categories. Hidden object games, point and click adventure games, I have a lot of those on the wish list too. So I copied that name, and on my secondary monitor on the right I have 4 columns, one that says remove it from the wish list, one that says put it at the top of the wish list, one says ignore it forever, which there's only about 3 games that I've ignored forever, and although I've accidentally clicked the ignore button about 35 times, so I had to go de-ignore them inside the settings. And then the 4th column is put it to the follow list. So now we can move on with a more family-friendly game. We have Oceanhorn Monsters of Uncharted Sea, which looks like an action RPG game. It's not a terribly recognizable game. It looks like it might be a 3D Legend of Zelda inspired type experience. So yeah, this doesn't look bad, but it also feels like something that I think I would remember better for a 2015 game, and the only game from this developer, which is not really a problem. I only really consider a developer as dead, their company is dead in the fact that they're not developing anything new after 4 years. So if 2019 or 2020 comes around and they still haven't announced or done anything else, then I'd imagine this Fox and Brothers, or Corn Fox and Brothers, that's probably, it's either Computer Fox, or Corn is the name of this developer. So yeah, this looks like Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. Like, they totally stole the entire generic concept and made a game. But it's 83% positive of 786 reviews, so that sounds pretty good. And it's been historically at $4.63, but its main price of $15 doesn't sound like that's asking too much. How Long to Beat is working here, so we can see that it's 9 hours to do the main story compared to like 11 hours to do the main story and extras, compared to 16 hours to play as a completionist. So some of these plugins, like the OpenCritic plugin that shows reviews, are working a lot better on this game. A lot more people have played this game. The performance survey has some information. I believe this is OpenCritic's plugin again, showing the certifications and the Metacritic information. So this is an iOS port of a cell phone game, but it seems like it mostly, for all those Legend of Zelda fans, definitely check this out. And inherently, like, the complaints here are it didn't run on my computer, which isn't that useful. It doesn't work on Linux, or on their computer, which isn't that useful. Here's a more informative and helpful review saying it's boring. That being said, when you have such a large majority and mob rule vote like this, like, I really have to follow the majority vote here and think that this is probably a decent game. And Nintendo games will never come to PC, almost certainly. So if you want to play anything that is similar to a Nintendo game, you have to play some kind of clone style game. So this looks good. In fact, it looks so good, I'm willing to put this at the top of the wish list. Now, there are a lot of Metroidvanias on Steam, but most of them don't feel like they are actually aping and cloning Metroid too much. They're taking the gameplay mechanics and the gameplay style, but they aren't particularly trying for a space bounty hunter going on planets shooting alien creatures concept. I believe this is possibly a clone of a game of Rampage. It looks a little bit like that. Let's see how it actually plays. This game, Octagon. Inherently, it's rated positive too, so it's going to stay on the wish list. I'm going to spend some extra time, since this was going to be a shorter experience anyways, to look at every game and just be very certain that that there's only one game that every game deserves to be on here. So this is it's actually kind of a shooter game. You get more arms, and you can swim in water, and then you're kind of stuck on land. This is a very silly looking game. But it also looks very varied, which is actually quite interesting. Like, generally speaking, I would think somebody with this idea of a game would do one joke and just play it out until it got boring. Apparently this is from the makers of Plants vs. Zombies also. Let's see if this developer's made anything else. No? But then again, this came out in 2018. If this didn't have 25 user reviews, I might put it on the follow list at that point, but this actually looks very, very good. 82 on Metacritic is particularly high, although I don't tend to want to listen to Metacritic reviews too much because I don't agree with a large amount of posters, mainstream video game journalists who put their reviews on or get their reviews aggregated on Metacritic. Next we have Odium to the Core, which is a 2018 game that only has 19 reviews, so I really don't have to look at it right now. I can give it a year and we'll come back next year in the end of the year, clean up and just look at it and see how a year of people playing it has done. Now the only reason I can do this is because I'm perpetually underfunded to buy games brand new. If I was, say, one of the top streamers everywhere and had that kind of ad revenue coming in, I would buy a lot of games brand new, whether they were good or bad, and play them, and I wouldn't be able to put things on the follow list and wait to see what other people are saying about it. I'd be creating the hype, not listening to the hype or listening to the reviews. That being said, my experience right now is very similar to what I imagine most people do. Particularly if you're watching my channel, you've probably seen a lot of games you haven't heard of that are slightly older games, and that plays a different role for people. If you're looking for something cheap, if you're looking for something that you've missed, if you're looking for those hidden gems that have possibly fallen down in history, then playing these older games makes sense, and that's certainly what I want to do. Eventually, theoretically at least, I would play every single game that's on my wish list, and there would only be new games. It's unlikely that would ever happen. There would have to be severe droughts for several years as far as video games coming out, and if anything, more and more video games are getting released all the time. So this game is Odyssey, the Story of Science. It's rated mostly positive, and this looks like a Myst clone. That's MYST, one of my favorite series of games, puzzle island games with where you wander around. They are effectively, Myst games are effectively, I would say, better versions of what walking simulators are. So it's kind of strange that walking simulators came out after the fact, where because in the first game Myst, you are walking around quite a bit, but there's still puzzles, there's still gameplay mechanics. The idea that then years later people made games that didn't have any puzzles is kind of crazy. Seems like there's some educational aspect to this game also, which is interesting. Has a third-party EULA, which is not the greatest thing ever, but I don't generally complain too much about third-party EULAs, although that will get other people to rate your game negatively. This developer hasn't made anything else. There's several Myst clones on my wish list. They all tend to look pretty good visually, so I don't think I'd really choose to remove any of them. Inherently also, there is Myst 3 and Myst 4 and Myst... I think I may already own Myst 5, but Myst 3 and Myst 4 just came out, and so I need to purchase those, and they're at the top of my wish list because of that reason. They just came out in the sense that they just were added to Steam, where they weren't available for purchase on Steam for a very long time. The games themselves are incredibly old. Next we have Of Light and Darkness, which is a point-and-click adventure game. It's a 4:3 ratio game, and theoretically I could try to do a pass and remove all games that aren't widescreen point-and-click adventures. I don't think that would be the right move. That's a little snobbish. The reason why this is on the wish list is because it's an Interplay published games. Interplay published a lot of games in the 90s. This apparently came out in 1998, and so it has some relevance there because it's a known company, but I am not 100% certain that I actually want to play every single Interplay game just because it's an Interplay game. And there's probably a very good argument against playing one that didn't really go anywhere, didn't make any sequels, didn't surprise anybody with any amazing graphics. For its time, this probably was a lot of work to animate like this, these 3D graphics. But now it looks old and dated, and asset flips in low effort games can look twice as good as this does. Let's see what the one review is down here. I used to have this game on disc years ago, but I lost it. Now I spent years trying to remember what this game is. Now I have found that this game is very hard and the story is very confusing. I'm still not got past the first level. The controls are very annoying since you can only use your mouse. But if you want a very weird game from the 90s and you have the time and patience to play it, I recommend it. So yeah, this very well may be a hidden gem of a sorts for people who love point-and-click adventure games, and old point-and-click adventure games in particular. For most people, it's probably an easily skippable game. I can't, however, put this on the follow list because it's probably never going to get any more reviews. If we came back in a year, maybe it would have 2 or 3, so I have to make the decision now, and I'm going to leave it on the decision of leaving this on the wish list and make a special exception, basically. Next we have Of Orcs and Men, an RPG fantasy action single player game according to the tags. So this is a 2012 game that's 73% positive of 862 reviews. There comes a question here about why would I want to play this instead of, say, Warcraft? Because that's basically all I can compare it to. Cyanide Studios, I believe, is somewhat recognizable as a developer. That orc that we just saw, that goblin, is like the exact same character that I've seen in a different game. Always have to remind myself, don't get distracted by the cleavage in games. Like, sex sells, most definitely, but it usually, very often, is used to sell bad games. So there's a game named Styx that goblin looks a lot like he's from that game, like the exact same 3D model. But I don't think this game has anything to do with Styx. and Styx is spelled S-T-Y-X, which there's 2 games in that series. See, and I played Styx and I didn't really enjoy it that much. The level design and the gameplay design didn't look that interesting. And see, we're mostly looking at cutscene sections here, not actual gameplay. So these videos are deceptive, I would guess. Let's see. So let's see what we can see on the reviews. I'm trying to find reasons. Here's Styx, by the way. Styx Master of Shadows, which is a 2014 sequel to I believe Styx Shards of Darkness. Or maybe this is the first game in it. Let's see if the other Styx game is also recommended. No, it isn't. So we'll look at that in a second. Here we have, I really don't understand why this game gets overall positive feedback. The storyline itself is quite nice and there's some expected occasions going on, but the gameplay itself is really annoying. You just follow a single path without much choice of choosing your own way through the game, and the most slightly obstacle can prevent you from passing by normally. That doesn't sound like a native English speaker there. And action sequences feel really terrible. Sometimes the characters get stuck and prevent them to attack and doing something completely different or stupid than order. Rough around the edges, but the story is nice. I don't know if I'd pay for it full price. This is the 3rd game from Spiders that I've played, which is, say, I'm enjoying their games. Got no par with BioWare, Bethesda, or Blizzard. And see, when you talk about Activision Blizzard games, why not play Warcraft? Not World of Warcraft, but Warcraft 1 and 2, which are groundbreaking, particularly old games. So we're getting a very consistent issue here where people are saying the story is really good but the gameplay sucks from this, as far as this game is concerned. Let's see, and this is from the same company, same developer that made Styx. Interesting. Yeah, Shards of Darkness came out in 2017 and it's the sequel, whereas the game I've already covered was Master of Shadows in 2014. So they took the same animation and same character and brought him into a new game, I guess. Although, yeah, 2012. See, that kind of sucks too, because now that makes me think, oh, actually I didn't even get the full story when I played Styx, Shards of Darkness, or whatever this is, Master of Shadows, because this is actually the first game in the series, which that's very weird, because certainly there was nothing that gave me any indication that that was the case. So Master of Shadows is a stealth game where you're climbing around buildings, and there's just a lot of difficult stealth sections, and its gameplay mechanics involves cloning yourself and trying to avoid detection a lot, and see, I just don't feel like Cyanide Studio is a very good quality AA developer of games. The other games they've made are like cycling games, and they probably make those pretty good, but I don't think their attempt to branch out into something different worked the way they thought it was going to work. So there's an example of you cloning yourself. Like, you use the knife that he is showing off pretty rarely, honestly. And very often the case is that if you do try to engage in combat in the game, you just die. So it's not something that works very well for people who aren't very good players of stealth games. So I think I just have to make an executive decision here, is that this really isn't something I'm interested in playing, because I played Master of Shadows. I wasn't interested in playing the sequel, so I'm really not interested in playing the prequel either. Now, this Call of Cthulhu game that's coming out in 2018 is on the fall list. Oh, wait, it just did come out, I guess. And people are rating it very positively. So maybe this would be the point in which I start to like their games. But mostly they've been making cycling managing games, and I won't want to play those, or basketball managers, or simplistic games. Must be very odd to switch between playing a manager game and a goblin game. Apparently they also had a Game of Thrones game they made. Probably already own that, and struggling to get around to playing it. Game of Thrones Genesis also. Yeah, you would think that they would have more money to make more games by licensing out the Game of Thrones video games, but I imagine that's actually not too true. So yeah, to move forward, we're taking too long even for a shorter experience here. I'm gonna remove of Orcs and Men, and I'm going to double check that I have both of these Game of Thrones games, even though this one is only 31% positive. People really don't like this game. I wonder why the reason is. Shameless cash in. Horrendous bandware, cashing in on the name without anything to provide the proper atmosphere or gameplay. Horrible game. People really not happy with this. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this tab. I don't need to buy terrible games, like, just to rip them a new one, basically, and criticize them if everybody else has already covered them. Next we have Osore Prototype, which was rated very positively. I believe this game I already have several of their other games, so I'm just, well, actually this is a free game, so I just have it on the wishlist probably to remind myself to play it. And their next game, Weedcraft Incorporated, is coming out in 2019 for all the people interested in that. Like, I would be fairly certain if you tried to play that game, you would get demonetized on YouTube every single episode. Osore, all their games are insult simulator games. I'm not sure that they're the greatest ever, but there's a whole series of these that they were able to sell at cheap prices. And then the only other game they have is Crush Your Enemies, which I believe is already on the wish list, or I decided to take it off the wish list, so I'll leave things as they are. So, alright. Moving forward, we have OKKO Let's Play Heroes. This is a Cartoon Network cartoon based video game, I guess is what you would say. Yeah, it's kind of weird because it's a Cartoon Network video game based off of a Cartoon Network cartoon that involves a cartoon cartoony card game inside the cartoon. Now, if I'm gonna be honest here, this animation style that is being done looks pretty bad. I've never really felt like the animation style of a lot of the Cartoon Network shows, a lot of the kid shows in general, have been super good. If I was to guess, is probably more of an industry about knowing people than it is an industry of being actually very, very good at animating. Whereas compared to, say, the Japanese anime or animation market, where there's a lot of people who are good to animate and they work way too hard and at way too little pay. So, but they also take the Japanese style of pride in their work, even when they are being abused by their employers. So you really wouldn't get a Japanese animation studio that would come out with something like this. I'm not sure anybody is actually coming out with something like this. This could be very much computer generated, where you're having vast swaths of all the parts of the scene just filled in by a computer, or it's telling you we need a mouth open movement, so animate that. We need a mouth closed movement, animate that, and then it just takes those 2 frames of animation and plugs it into thousands of incidents of a character playing. So this is like a card-based fighting beat-em-up game. I'm gonna leave this one on the wish list, but it really comes down to whether OKKO is a success. I'm not sure it really is. It may not even be on Cartoon Network at this point, because I haven't heard anything since January 22nd. But in general speaking, these games also are severely unlikely to go down in price. In general speaking, Cartoon Network games have this relevancy. If I'm trying to play a kid's game, you would consider playing something that's being published by Cartoon Network alongside any other developers, just because of that name recognition. They also have Adventure Time, Finn and Jake's Epic Quest. There's another Adventure Time game that I don't believe is published by Cartoon Network. In fact, there's several other Cartoon Network games that are on Steam. I would probably play Adventure Time first. That name seems a lot more recognizable. And as far as Cappy, their name as a developer sounds a little recognizable. So there's Might and Magic Clash of Heroes, which is a game I've covered, and so that name is recognizable, whereas Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery might be worth playing. I doubt that Critter Crunch really is worth playing, but I'll be generous. Then you can see the games are in good company. At least everything here is rated very positively. So Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery is a point-and-click adventure game. Would not have expected that. I really wouldn't have expected that. And that definitely is a different art style from what we were seeing before. But also, if they're making a licensed cartoon game, the art style has to look like the cartoon. Critter Crunch is a puzzle action game. I'm not 100% sure how it works. Really. It seems like there's something odd about a critter playing a game with their tongue. It seems like what you're trying to do is eat certain things to make match 3s. Okay. you're picking something up and putting it back down, which there was an arcade game that was somewhat like this. I don't remember the name of it though. Yeah, that didn't look too bad. So I'll add Critter Crunch to the wish list. And next we have Super Time Force Ultra, which is a platformer 2D game, which looks like you're jumping and running through different time zones. Again, rated very positively, so I'll add that to the wish list too. I'm adding more things and I'm taking things off. As it turns out, I do quite often, as I've been trying to do the cleanup. But that's a good thing too, because you know, I want to fill in any gaps. If there are games that people know I should cover, suggest them in the comments. Let's fill out any gaps of anything that I've missed, and maybe I already own them and I just haven't covered them before. So if somebody suggested in the comments, I put it at the top of my list to play next. Or maybe it's something that I've had a complete blind spot for. Something I haven't had a complete blind spot for is Okami, which came to PC in 2017, but it was a Wii game originally. It might play a little bit better with the Wiimote. There definitely were some Wii games that really couldn't be ported very well without the Wiimote actions, but I still think it's totally playable to play Okami. I want to play Okami. This is 91% positive over its lifetime. This is also a point in my life where I was starting to run into having less and less time when Okami originally came out for the Wii. I was having less and less time to play video games, and so I was seeing more and more games that I wanted to play, but I couldn't actually get around to do it. Ironically, it was because I was working a job, so I was having moderately more and more money to buy video games, but the hours, the forced overtime, made it impossible to ever enjoy any of that money. So yeah, that's definitely something you want to always try to avoid in your adult life if you can do that. Okami has a very interesting art style. It's like Japanese drawings on papyrus style art style. I'm sure there's a Japanese phrase for that, but I don't know what it is. So yeah, I guess this should be at the top of my wish list. Yeah, because I really do want to play it. And part of the good thing about being a video game critic now is at least I can live in a hopeful state that I will get around to playing a lot more of these games. And that kind of is what the wish list is too, is that there's a ton of games that I do want to play now. I've also changed, certainly, over the years and expanded my horizons. I would have been a lot more picky on the styles of games and the types of games in my youth compared to what I am now. Now I'm a little bit more broad and a little bit more willing to do something that's out of my comfort zone. Next we have Ukla's Omega, which I think is part of a series of games, Ukla games. So it's a strategy game where I think you get a mob to follow you and fight for you. It's from Devolver Digital, which some of their games are good, some of their games aren't. This doesn't look terrible. It kind of feels like it might be like a top-down twin-stick shooter concept with the idea of a mob. I saw a zombie game that was somewhat similar to this, and the idea of it being zombies appeals a lot more than it just being random Greek and Roman people. But yeah, this is pretty heavily discounted right now while it's on sale. It's rated very positively. I don't see any reason why I would take Ukla's Omega off the wish list. Let's see if this developer has made anything else. Let's see. What's the Hidden Gems bundle include? Ronin, Ollie, Dropsy. I do want to play Dropsy at some point. I think I probably own it already. Heavy Bullets, Ollie 2, Not a Hero, Ukla's Omega. An omnibus. It's probably not a terrible bundle right now, in particular, since it's discounted. Let's just, I guess, look. See if there is. Okay. HLOS. I guess the case is that maybe they changed the name and Omega is an indicator of a final version, like a deluxe edition, Game of the Year edition. This is from 2016, so it's possible that they changed the name. Yeah, Dropsy is a weird looking point and click adventure game where you play as a creepy clown. Devolver Digital is kind of known for their weird little games. This is a great example of one, but it's rated very positively too, 94% positive. So people knew what they were getting into, at least. Not a lot of people hating the experience. Next we have Old Man's Journey, which is a story-rich adventure according to the user tags. I think it is kind of an adventure where you're just always walking. Let's watch some of the gameplay and see if there's anything you do as far as a gameplay mechanic. Also, I'm going to drink some water right now. Right now might be a good time to pause the video and take a break yourself. I have this vague memory of a game like this where you had to shift the environment there. Yeah. Just like that. That's what I was thinking, is that there was some little bit of shifting the environment to help him reach his paths. And there's been several games like that, but they all tend to go in different directions, telling different types of stories. And since I'm certainly focused around games that have good stories, you wouldn't really compare similar games like that in the same way. So yeah, you just kind of drag and click the textures and the levels to make paths. So a simplistic concept, but probably pretty decent one. Next we have Omega Quintet, which is a JRPG. It's got 70 reviews, 75% positive. This very possibly is not going to be one of the top 10 JRPGs that I decide to play. There's a pretty good chance it isn't. But until we get to that point where we are, I'm just going to have a long list of JRPGs. This one actually is on sale for a particularly good price at $12. There's Let's see. There's some packs. Seven packs as far as DLC that you can buy. It says it has full English audio, which might be helpful in a JRPG. But it is a big commitment too. 42 to 120 hours of gameplay. And see, that's why I need to be really careful about this. This basically has some kind of in-game currency that you get via buying some of the DLC, but it's probably not microtransactions. It's probably just how easy do you want the game to be. And take note here that the average playtime, which includes everybody who launched the game for a minute and then never played it again, and everybody who left it for hundreds of hours going, is only 7 hours and 15 minutes, whereas if how long the beats information is accurate, it takes 42 hours to actually beat the game. So that would be a considerably large amount of people that never finished it. Inherently, there is an idea here of buying something just because there's a bunch of anime girls on it and then getting bored and leaving. It's a hybrid between an idol simulator and a role-player game developed. See how long this review goes. Really long. And to give it a 5 out of 10. The game is disappointingly good. It has a lot of potential from the general plot and gameplay itself. However, it falls flat when the story becomes obfuscated. And yes, if you haven't realized that the game isn't for some generic JRPG fans like me to enjoy. You have to be willing to put in a lot of hard work in this game to find it fun and enjoyable. However, the gameplay is amazing enough to keep me continuing playing. Conclusion: if you want fan service and a complex battle system, this is for you. And while I love fan service, aka cheesecake, aka lewd imagery or situations, I really couldn't cover a game like this, and it's probably not worth keeping on the wish list. Like, even if somebody was to gift this game to me and I was just going to say do a 30-minute quick look on it and then never play it again, I feel like that would just be a waste of money in general, even at $11.99. There's better games out there, and overall I think the gameplay function needs to be more focused on. I think the game itself needs to be a better experience, because even the Final Fantasy games, or probably more accurate, it would be more accurate to say even the Dragon Quest games, which are way better, have little bits of fan service elements to them, but it's not the selling factor. It's not the main focus. Moving on, we have Omen Site, which is tagged as an action-adventure RPG. A lot of videos here. Let's see, this is a 2018 game, but it's already rated very positively, so I should just make the decision now whether this is a game I want to play. Seems like you play as a mouse, but I couldn't really tell because you are zoomed out at some very far distances and some pretty wide angles and weird angles. So let's see what the trailer looks like. Sorry, drinking water. Ran out of water. Still have a bunch of ice in the middle. Cup, mug, whatever it's called. Well, this trailer so far is not really showing me much. It's a bad way to make a trailer, to do a lot of flashing to black and showing just simplistic short scenes. Like, it feels like what they're hiding here is admits that there are no long cutscenes in the game and there's no great point to show off gameplay. And so far we haven't seen a single bit of what actually looks like gameplay. Even the fighting that we're seeing feels like it is a cutscene of some sort. And these fighting cutscenes do look slightly interesting, but I really need to see something that looks like a video game, and I've yet to see that. If the camera is zoomed in really close to a character, that's highly unlikely to be a gameplay video, a gameplay sequence. If it's zoomed out incredibly far, it might be a gameplay sequence. See, like, that entire video was probably a teaser video with no actual gameplay. And see, all this animation, while good looking and all, it's not at least not done by the same team usually. And they've got several different videos. Okay, here we have some gameplay for a second there. It looks like. And it looks like it's just a hack and slash game. This is the definitive edition according to this thumbnail, but the name didn't change. They have a bundle for something called The Stories, The Path of Destinies. I'm stretching here to think if there's a reason to remove this. I don't think there is. It's a spiritual sequel to a very charming game. So a long negative review there. Stories, The Path of Destinies. So people really love this other game that this developer has made. Let's look. So they don't like Omen Sight, but they really like Stories, The Path of Destinies. And this is rated very positively. So also Tiny Brains is mostly positive. I remember this game. I wonder if it's actually on my wish list already. Okay, so this is a kind of easy decision to make. I go back here, not there. I go back here and take out Omen Sight from the wish list right now. And instead, I get Stories and add that to the wish list. And if I play Stories, The Path of Destinies, and I really enjoy it, which it seems like a lot of people did, then I come back and play Omen Sight. And honestly, the two games don't look incredibly different. So maybe after playing this game, I decide, yeah, it's not really worth playing Omen Sight. Let's see. And the DLC is just art books and soundtracks, so don't really have to worry about that. Now, for Tiny Brains, this is a kind of puzzle game, I think, is the idea. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Can you play it single player? I know it's designed for like 4-player co-op, local co-op, but I'm fairly certain that you can play it single player. Let's see. Can be solved multiple ways depending on the group's combined powers. So my experience playing this 3-hour game would probably be different than a lot of other people's experience, but this certainly was a game that was coming out when the idea of more people playing together had made a resurgence in the video game world, and it's from 505 Games as the publisher. 505 Games apparently changing their names to Spearhead Games. I think there's another game company called 505 Industries or something, that's because that sounds familiar. So yeah, I'll double check to make sure this is on the wish list. Next we have Omnilink, which is a visual novel that is 30 positive from earlier this year. This is a weirder visual novel than usual because it has, I think if I'm recalling correctly, this experience system where you're trying to you get different endings based on the different interactions, and that's what the web of people indicates, is you are connecting people to your storyline. This is more of a Western animation style from a Western developer making a visual novel, and I want to applaud games like this compared to, say, something that makes a visual novel but kind of makes it an extremely weird visual novel. Like Hatoful Boyfriend is a great example of a visual novel game that's too weird and is almost disrespecting the genre for how much of a difference it is to call itself a visual novel. Also, it looks like there's actual gameplay, a basic asteroids game that, generally speaking, I don't want to play basic asteroid games, but assuming there's an actual story here, I would be willing to leave that and overlook it. Let's see. Match your abilities against the faceless terror. Let's see. The game takes you on a mission for this corporation. Let's see. So it has real-time tactical combat, which is basically the Asteroids game. Choices that affect gameplay and story, hand-drawn art and epic and music, and then a manga adaptation. So you see several scenes as if you're reading a manga. Let's see what the reviews are. It's not that great. It's a great concept, but it's poorly executed. Let's see. If you die during the flying sequence, you have no recourse but to start the entire game over from the beginning. It's a slight problem. It's a lot of early access reviews listed here. Is this a still early access game? Because if it is, I can put it on the follow list. Yep. It's only in English, so you know it's probably not from a Japanese developer. Let's look at this developer in comparison. They have this negatively reviewed royalty-free sprites bundle that they're selling. Very negatively reviewed, of 16 user reviews. And then another graphics pack, and another graphics pack. So it almost comes down to the question of after 4 years of trying to sell sprites and graphics for as much as this game Omnilink, did they decide that they actually needed to make a game to highlight their own set of graphics. And I don't know what kind of business you can run, honestly, if you're an artist. Like, can you actually make money selling art on the Unity Asset Store or somewhere else? Or are you forever just a starving artist as far as drawing these kind of characters? You might be forever a starving artist. Maybe you could get somebody to hire you, but the only way people could even find you is if you're running some kind of, like, I don't know, Instagram page or DeviantArt page or something like that to promote yourself and take commissions. But I don't think you can do it for video games in particular. I think you probably would want to do it for a more general reason. Anyways, I'm going to leave OmniLink on the wish list. I'm kind of wandering aimlessly here. Now for this game, Omni Beyond War, which is from a different developer, although the names seem similar and they're both space games. I don't really have to make a decision here because I can just put this on the follow list. It's not out yet. It kind of looks like a Robotech clone in its idea and story. That wouldn't be terrible if it was a Robotech or Gundam style clone. Like, I'm saying Robotech, but Robotech was a cartoon that cut up the animation from 3 other anime series and changed things around. So I'm trying to remember what the first one in that series was called. Was it Robocross? No, it wasn't. I know it wasn't a Gundam. It was Macross, I believe. So this might be a Macross clone, but it doesn't look too bad, honestly. So yep, just leave it on the follow list. Although take note that in that entire video you did not see any of these characters, so either those elements haven't been animated yet or they're pretty boring looking. Next we have Omnibus, which was one of the games we thought about looking at. It's mostly positive from Devolver Digital. Let's see. I believe what the deal with this game is that you are trying to do as much damage as possible while crashing a bus. Yeah, I think that's the idea. So it's just another digital Devolver crazy concept turned into a game. It's kind of like a pinball game, I suppose, is the idea. It doesn't look like you have much, if any, control of the bus after a certain point. Now, to be fair, the graphics here look downright awful. Very low polygon. You really wouldn't want to play this game or buy a game like this if it didn't have that relevancy of being a Devolver Digital, and that's questionable even at that. And the historical low price on this is $1.99. But honestly, I'm not buying games right now. I'm just cleaning up the wish list. When it comes to the point where I have to put my money where my mouth is, I would probably keep an eye out on this and say, you know what, there's a lot better games that I could spend $250 on than Omnibus, but I don't see a reason to really remove it from the wish list either. It'll just probably sit there forever, as a lot of games will, and I'll just never actually act on the decision to purchase them. Let's see, next we have On Rusty Trails, which it says it's an indie platformer. I'm not sure if I'm sold on this one or not. Like, I've never heard of this developer. Gotta skip all of this. This looks like this is probably a Super Meat Boy-esque style of platformers, by which I mean an incredibly difficult game that I would probably suck at. Like, having recently just played Super Meat Boy, more and more I'm starting to realize, like, yeah, I should not try and play these kind of games. I'm not going to get very far in them. I'm not going to be able to do very good criticism of them because they're just not for me. Like, as somebody who has a little bit of arthritis in their fingers, games like this that are brutal are just too brutal for me. So I'm gonna copy this to remove it. Let's see what else this developer's made and throw him a bone. Tiny and Big Grandpa's Leftovers, and About Love, Hate, and the other ones. So I think I already own this game, just haven't gotten around to playing this, so I'll double check to make sure it's on the wish list. It's a moderately interesting game when it came out, but if that's their most recent game in 2012, they've kind of fizzled out as a company. And then About Love and Hate, I don't think I've ever heard of this. Let's see. Is this a Lemmings game? Or is it a puzzle game? This is much more playable than a Super Meat Boy style of platformer, though. It looks slow and more doable. They want $1.74. It's been as low as 63 cents. So yeah, I'll leave that. In all honesty, buying this bundle, particularly if I already own this game, might be the best deal. Just to own both games, even if I have no interest of really playing on Rusty Trails. Next we have a visual novel called One Day in London that is 92% positive. Now, this is another more standard Western game that you almost wouldn't call a visual novel if you didn't want to. Like, you could call it just an adventure game. Inherently, the fact that I'm seeing puzzles in the game tells me it really isn't a visual novel, because visual novels, with a small exception of dialogue choices, shouldn't really have any other gameplay in them. I feel like there's a hierarchy in my own head that a visual novel is basically just a novel with some visuals, basically a book with pictures, whereas an adventure game could have all the elements of a visual novel but have some kind of gameplay mechanic, whether it's running, jumping, shooting, fighting, or solving puzzles. You wouldn't generically call a game a puzzle game unless it was just 100% puzzles. Though, well, I wouldn't. And there's chapters here, so this entire game is like $22.46 because of DLC. So that kind of sucks. Too, it might get this game removed from the wish list just because it's kind of running some trickery. This is not really a game. The art is really great. The story is badly written, translated, and just simple proofreading would have caught most of the errors. Being that it was simply a visual novel, there wasn't much of it in the way of actual gameplay. It's simply click on things until you get to the end. After a few games, puzzles that were involved were either oversimplified or completely random guessing. The story itself was filled with useless extra text that neither furthered the story or enhanced the game. I will not be getting the next chapters. This would need to be a lot more interesting and a lot of editing before I'd be interested in continuing this novel. There's definitely a thought to about would you be better just reading a story. I want to look at this game, and like there's several games here getting reviewed or recommended that I haven't seen before that I suspect are all pretty bad games or really new games. So yeah, there is a case certainly to be made now of just reading novels and not playing visual novel games, but there are good visual novel games out there. There is also, I want to point out, this game, The Silver Case, has a lot of relevancy. I'm pretty sure it's already on my wish list though. So they want $8.99 for the first game as it's on sale. This game is from a developer I don't know, and they haven't done anything else. It's 93% positive, but I think I can be a little bit more critical and remove this. Like, if I am gonna play visual novels, it's a stretch certainly to play something like this, because all I would be doing is playing this game to balance out the fact that I would also be playing several Japanese centric anime visual novel games, and it's almost a false equity attempt. Well, it is literally a false equity attempt. I'm trying to have equal outcome as far as Western and Eastern visual novels, when in reality that just will never happen. It's 101 Japanese companies, 100 Japanese companies to one Western company that makes visual novels. Let's see, how's this one? This is a free-to-play anime RPG according to the game. Looks like it's all played on your phone. Is this really in English? Nope. It isn't, so never mind. Close that one. This one has 6 reviews and looks pretty poorly animated. So Steam was just really recommending some pretty awful games in line with that game, which probably means it's not that good. This looks like a newer game, so maybe do I want to put this on my follow list? Seems like what you're doing is delivering mail to get some kind of story. It's like a mystery. Let's see. Well, this looks like an interesting idea to send letters back and forth. So I'll put this on the follow list. Undelivered. That's a new one. And then this one looks like it's an RPG Maker clone style game. So this doesn't look very interesting, and clearly not that many people have played it. So I can close this one pretty quickly. Then this one is not supported by English, so even if it was something that I wanted to cover, which honestly it might not, it very well might be something I want to cover, they would have to translate it. This is a Korean only game. I saw somebody actually review this game just randomly on YouTube, so this is something that maybe I would think about covering. It's English only, which is kind of surprising, but doesn't. After having seen the review, I don't want to go through it too much, but it looks slightly interesting. Although you could certainly also make the argument that it's kind of low effort pencil sketchings around the visual novel instead of being fully colored or drawn in. Some of these characters' faces not drawn very well at all. And this visual horror novel is mixed reviews, so there's no reason for that to be on the wish list. The Silver Case, on the other hand, is from Grasshopper, which is a recognizable developer that is, let's see, well, you can't just look at Grasshopper games, but it's made by Suda51, a well-known Japanese developer who makes weirder games. This, I think, was one of his first yeah, this is his debut title, so there's reasons to certainly play this. Next we have One Deck Dungeon, which is mostly popular, 79%. Came out this year. Hit roguelike adventure that captures the fun of a dungeon crawler in one deck of cards. That might be an interesting idea, but what I'm seeing on the screen doesn't actually look that fun. This doesn't look, well, that's fine, but this doesn't look like a well thought out information menu section. Doesn't look like there's much going on during gameplay. You're just like rolling dice. Suppose we'll give it a chance and just see what the gameplay looks like when you're actually playing it. Yeah, it really does seem like you're just rolling dice. And as much as they may throw this character in your face to try and distract you, that's not what the gameplay is. That being said, maybe people know that, like, I don't think people are feeling amazingly deceived by what this game is. So maybe there is a reason why you would want to do this like this. Perhaps it speeds up the process, and a single gameplay of something like Dungeons and Dragons takes way too long, which arguably is probably always the case, that games like Dungeons and Dragons do take way too long. And if you're going to make a digital version of the game, maybe there are ways you could try and speed up that process. Inherently, one could make an argument, as somebody who doesn't play Dungeons and Dragons, I could make the argument that every Dungeons and Dragons game is a first rough draft on a story that could be a RPG game turned into a video game. That way, if you have a really good experience playing Dungeons and Dragons, you take those good experiences, you put them all together in a row, you have a really great story to tell. If you have a very mediocre or bad experience playing Dungeons and Dragons, you cut that stuff and forget about those parts. Average playtime here is 5 hours and 33 minutes. It still feels like that is a lot of time. And compared to something like Hand of Fate, which looks a lot better and has a sequel, Hand of Fate 2, I don't know if this game makes any sense. I may have already covered and suggested the better games as far as Hand of Fate is let's see. The game is partially a role-playing game. All the characters you play, even everyone, is female. This should be disclosed before buying. I'm not arguing for all male characters, just that to enjoy the sort of game some of us like to relate to our heroes, why not have a gender option? Okay, fair enough. Says it has multiplayer, thought it would be fun to play with my wife, but one person controlling everything makes someone's verbal commands doesn't make them feel very included. Let's see, game is very repetitive. Doesn't have co-op mode even though it stated it does. There isn't even a way to reset your game. All the progress you earned with your characters is permanently between sessions. There's probably some background way to delete a save file, but not inside the game is a problem. Yeah. It's a little weird too that they really only focused on this one character when you see clearly there are 4 other characters in the thumbnail. Let's see, this is from someone who made a baseball game in 2017 and a game called Sentinels of the Multiverse, which is another card game, in 2014. And I don't like the way that looks either. It would be kind of hard to play a card game since I play Hearthstone every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday already. Even if it is a deck builder card game and not a collectible card game like Hearthstone is, there would be a lot of criticism that would come along with that. So one deck dungeon is getting removed, it's just not up to the level. Next we have One Last Chance, a anime visual novel game that is mixed at 67%. So this is a great opportunity for me to prove I'm not just a sucker for every single anime game out there and remove this. Because yeah, there's, I don't think, really a reason for me to cover it. I don't recognize this developer either. So they made a game called The Grand Ball, which is 70% of 10 user reviews. So not many people played that either. The deluxe edition. So yeah, we can remove this from the wish list, move on. Next we have a almost certainly Western game called One Night Stand. This is rated 90% positive over its lifetime with 344 reviews, which is quite high. I don't recognize this developer. And this isn't honestly something I would generally say is an art style. This outline with water paint over it. But I might be willing to say in this case it actually is an art style. When you look here, the fact that there's shading and shadowing and texture and they're staying within the lines, either somebody animated this who was different than somebody who animated this, or there's an actual intent in what they're doing. This is probably a more introductory, simple visual novel type game. Let's see. Wake up next morning to find a complete stranger lying naked beside you in bed. What do you do? And so nothing here is actually getting tagged as sexual content or nudity also, so I don't know how long this game, how far this game goes. For $1.50 as what it's discounted right now, it's not terrible. Looking for red flags with the achievements. 37 minutes to 2 hours of gameplay, so this would be a really easy introductory game. Let's see. Bad dialogue according to this review. Mind-numbingly repetitive pretty quickly. If your game requires an option to fast forward through conversations because you do the same thing over and over again, there's something wrong going on. Let's see. Don't Make Love. Haven't heard of that one. And then The Letter. A horror visual novel. probably on the wish list. Here's a gay visual novel, it looks like. And see, I'm going down this route of adding more visual novels when I really should be taking them up. Meanwhile, like Shuffle, I recognize that one. So this one is gonna stay on the wish list specifically because it's short and cheap, and it's a Western style of game. Moving on, we have Don't Make Love, which is Praying Mantises, which this is kind of a joke game, so I'd be interested in that. And then I think The Letter is already on the wish list, so I'll leave that. Let's see. And I'm not afraid to play a gay game, so I'll put this on the wish list, although it's tagged not safe for work and nudity and all that, so I probably couldn't actually cover this. I'm definitely gonna have to think, if I ever do start covering these kind of games, how I would make videos to talk about them. Moving on, we have Onichambra Z2 Chaos. Unfortunately, it's the only Onichambra game on Steam. If you don't know what Onichambra is, it's, at best, you would say it's a medium effort game where you're playing as characters that hack and slash and kill zombies. At worst, you would say it's a low effort game where girls in bikinis hack and slash and kill zombies. There oddly aren't really any clones of this game that are better though, so you get kind of what you get, and it's not a terrible game. It's tagged nudity, so there might be some parts I have to censor, but also I think this game series isn't gonna be so consistently explicit. I think I could probably play this series and show it off. A lot of things too to remember about games that are tagged with nudity is like, a lot of times the amount of skin being shown and the specific skin being shown is similar or less than what a two-piece bikini would be. It's just that it has a weird anime fashion to it, or a slight inappropriate location or reason for it. Like, clearly this game is playing on the concept of it's totally ridiculous and inappropriate to be wearing a two-piece bikini while hacking and slashing at zombies. Although, to be true here, this isn't so much zombies as much as other kinds of monsters, it looks like. This developer also has Schoolgirls / Zombie Hunter, which is a slightly lower effort game in the same universe. 5 to 25 hours of gameplay. Let's see if this is an older game, so you're not really going to talk about like adult content. That form didn't exist when this game was released. The Senran Kagura series is similar, ninja girls fighting in several different styles of gameplays. Dead or School is somewhat similar in idea of a girl in a school outfit. It's repetitive, absolutely. Like, that's what the game is. You remove the fan service in this game and you get a very poor Devil May Cry. Probably true, yeah. Too. And so maybe I should just play Devil May Cry. But this is one of those secret desire games. Let's see if we can see Tamsoft alone. What else they've made. Yeah, they've made several of the Senran Kagura series, which honestly the Senran Kagura series is gaining traction, and the Onichamba series really is losing traction. Although their latest game in the series did come out in 2018. A lot of Senran Kagura DLC. I would also probably argue that the Onichamba series goes for a 3D, slightly older looking female characters, whereas the animation style over the years has gone for more of a flatter anime moe characters that look shorter, look potentially a little bit younger, whether or not they are said to be younger or not. So there's definitely evolving tastes that change in animation styles. So Schoolgirl Zombie Hunter is in the world of Onichamba, but not those two characters. It's a pretty simplistic game. You're running around areas. This is making it look a lot better than it actually is. And you're shooting guns. If you take damage, your clothes start to take damage and deteriorate. So the reason, I guess, why this is Schoolgirl Zombie Hunter instead of Onichamba is because Onichamba is with swords and this is with guns. And again, tagged with nudity, but I really don't know how much actual nudity you would get in it. Like, you very possibly get one bathing scene, and that's all of it for hours and hours of gameplay. Or, you know, sometimes you get every 5 minutes. And without somebody to tell you, you really don't know. Negative review here. It's a fun short game, about 5 hours worth of story, but not worth $40. It should cost more, at most $15 if it includes the costumes. Overall, it has 3 types of zombies in the game with some fan service. Let's see. So what is it on sale for right now? It's still $40. Yeah. So moving on, I suppose. Just to get our head around what Onichamba games are. We're taking longer than we really should. We have a game called Onorim's Card Solitaire. It's from Asmodee Digital, which makes a bunch of card games and board games and makes the digital versions of existing real world games like this. I think I played this game on my cell phone. It's mostly positive, and it is, if I'm recalling correctly, kind of a different type of game. So you have to learn this whole new system. Combine cards of the same color to open doors. Nightmares will act as obstacles. Use powerful key cards to avoid nightmares. So it was like a card game designed to be something kind of new. It's not really solitaire, other than the sense of, yes, it's a game you play by yourself. But it does something a little bit different. Arguably, these different types of card faces don't really matter, and you could have played a very similar game like this by just using regular cards, but I like the idea of using different cards faces. So I'll leave this on the wish list. It's free to play with 99 cents or $2 to buy expansions. So it's worth checking out, I imagine, right now. Next we have a game called OO, which is probably the worst name ever, and this doesn't look very good. This looks like a low effort game, and I've mentioned a lot of low effort games and the concept of low effort games, but I haven't really seen any because honestly most of them would never have made it to the wish list in the first place. So you're a ball, you pop back and forth between the spikes as you're spinning around, which almost certainly this would cause people to have motion sickness, and it seems like it's moving way too fast in this demo. It also seems like this is not a game really with very many strategies, as much as this might just be doing the same thing over and over again and trying over and over again when you die. This really does feel like a Nightmare Super Meat Boy style game where I'd constantly die and have to start over again. This is rated very positively, 92%, and it's 66 cents, so it's not even that expensive. But I'm gonna remove it. There is a possibility that at some point I would buy this bundle. I think I already own some of these games, at least Hook, and so at some point I might just buy the bundle and get this game anyways. But seeing the gameplay function, it seems to be made just to make people rage. I don't recommend this. Yeah, it does feel like it's a rage style game. So yeah, this is leaving the wish list. That may actually be the first game that has a letter and then the same letter in the name. Now, Ooblets is a somewhat Stardew Valley Pokemon clone style of game that's in development, so I don't really have to deal with it right now. You're half farming these animal characters and then half having them dance battle each other, I believe is what they do. They don't actually fight each other, which, in all fairness, Pokemon would have been really cool and wise if they introduced something similar to that when Pokemon first started. Or, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if they changed Pokemon at some point to get rid of the fighting element. That could be a whole new thing where there's just a generation where the Pokemon trainers decide they don't want their Pokemon to fight anymore, and instead they're going to do some other kind of action competition. But that would certainly require the abandonment of the entire idea of Pokemon having attacks whatsoever, which would be a lot of work, certainly. So Ooblets is starting at the beginning. That being said, this is a Double Fine game, and maybe it would be really boring to play a Pokemon game where the characters dance battle each other, depending on how long that is. There seems to be also a jogging training element to it. Oh, and they do actually fight each other. Okay, well, that seems weird. Anyways, this game is not out yet, so I don't have to really do anything. Although, I do need to actually put it on the correct list, because I had it on the remove list when actually it should be on the follow list. I've made several mistakes in doing this series so far of just putting things in the wrong way. Next we have OOO Ascension, which I wonder if this is a continuation of the previous game. but it doesn't really look like it. Let's see. It's like a Mario Galaxy racing game, is best I can tell. It has one review. I guess I don't have to make a decision right now because it came out this year. I can just put it on the follow list and move on. This might be a good game, this might be a terrible game. We'll see next year when we do the follow list cleanup. Let's see, next we have Operation Abyss Tokyo Legacy, which is an RPG dungeon crawler JRPG tagged with nudity. Now, there are a lot of bad dungeon crawler games that just look awful, and then they throw in some small bit of anime nudity to try and sell them. That's basically what this game is, but spending 42 hours and 60 to 65 hours playing this game makes no sense. Spending $20 on it makes no sense. Most dungeon crawlers in general look awful, and it's not a genre I really want to play whatsoever. So we can put this on the remove list pretty easily. It's an overly complicated, needlessly over-engineered waste of time. I question how popular dungeon crawlers even are in Japan. They certainly have a lot more popularity than they do probably in the rest of the world, but I kind of feel like they're low-hanging fruit games even there. It was Omega Labyrinth Z, which was a dungeon crawler. It was the first game to be banned from selling in the UK in, like, was it 10 years? Particularly because it just threw in nudity and sexual situations. And in all honesty, that game would have completely been under the radar and nobody would have bought it had it not had a controversy around it. Moving forward, we have Opus Magnum, which is kind of a programming game, but it's done with shapes and magic and alchemy. So you're not getting into a level of typing in words or learning any programming that way, which probably makes it a pretty good introductory game for programming. I would say Opus Magnum is probably the one you want to give to younger kids to play. It's from Zachtronics, a developer who's made several different games that have taken the idea of programming and put them in different ways. Shinsen IO, Infinifactory, Space Kim. Like, there's one other ones. What was it? I thought there was another one from them, but I guess not. But I would say Opus Magnum is the first one you'd probably want to give to kids, and then if they really like the concept, is this video going to play or not? You're specifically trying to place down elements that will create other elements and other shapes, and like most programming games, there's usually the fastest way to do it, the least number of steps to do it, and usually there's like a third category, which is the cheapest way or the most efficient way to do things. It doesn't look like much in the screenshots, but it's actually pretty good day, pretty good game. So I'm gonna put Opus Magnum at the top of my list. I've covered other programming games, and I was classically trained in programming, so I do know how to program somewhat. Probably a little bit more than somewhat, but that really wouldn't affect me covering this game too much. It would just mean slightly less frustration, theoretically. Although, to be fair, even I have run into some games that are a little too complicated, and I'm a little too rusty to remember how to do certain things. Next we have Opus Rocket of Whispers, which is not related. in any way to the previous game. It's rated 91% positive. It looks like it's saying it's an adventure game. So are you looking for items or are you playing resource management? Let's see. It's an award-winning post-apocalyptic adventure that follows two survivors on their journey to launch a space burial for the lost souls of their desolate world. Help them search the snowy wastelands for some supplies and the courage to say goodbye. A space burial. You'd think you'd want to build a rocket to leave the planet yourself if it's an apocalyptic world. The trailer is basically showing you the end of the game. I'm not sure if this is a game where you're able to play it multiple times or you play it once and that's it. I'm not sure if this is a game that is actually super interesting or if it's actually really boring. It sounds like there's a lot of writing in this that would explain why it's so highly reviewed. It sounds interesting, certainly. Let's see. There's another game called Opus: The Day We Found Earth. Apparently. So this is actually the sequel to this. Alright, so I need to make sure that this game has its sequel on the wish list. And inherently, I probably should remove the sequel and only have the original game on the wish list. But I'm not really doing that. I'm keeping everything on the wish list in case something goes on sale. This is weird, though. It's not from the same developer. So Opus: The Day We Found Earth is from a different developer completely. So this is the one that needs to be added. Okay. Moving forward. Next we have Orcs Must Die, a series of games and DLC for Orcs Must Die, which is a 3D tower defense game that's overwhelmingly positive. If I must play a tower defense game, I suppose Orcs Must Die is probably the one I want to play. I played, I believe, the first part of this game on Xbox 360 many years ago, and it was alright. It wasn't great. I'm not super sold as far as that, but everything right now particularly is pretty cheap if this mega pack includes Orcs Must Die 2. This developer is a Microsoft Studios developer publisher now. So yeah, you have this DLC that gets added for, well, 50 cents right now, that adds more artifacts and abilities. Unlike most tower defense games, you play as this character that has to run around and fight the orcs, also on top of setting up traps. It kind of is like Dungeon Keeper too, but it doesn't feel a lot like Dungeon Keeper, and that was part of my problem when I first played the series. Is I really just wanted to play a 3D version of Dungeon Keeper. And then there's another DLC, Lost Adventures, which are probably just more levels. 5 new levels, 2 new enemies. Few other things. This for 74 cents. And then Orcs Must Die 2 came out in 2012, and it probably didn't improve a ton, honestly, in the short time. And let's see, there's a bunch of DLC here. Family Ties Booster Pack, Fire and Water Booster Pack, and Are We There Yet? Are We There, Yeti? Might be the only actual gameplay expansion, whereas the booster packs might be nothing. Well, no, it's 3 new levels in the booster packs. So they were really nickeling and diming you when this game first came out, but now that it's so old, you can have the entirety of it for less than $10. Now, questionable about whether you really want to play a tower defense game of any sort. I imagine that there's quite a lot of people that don't. And then you have Orcs Must Die Unchained, which is a free-to-play game that has some bundles in here where you could spend $10, although it's possible that getting the hero bundle might overwrite getting the starter bundle, so you don't need to do either of them. In general, I don't think you need to do either one of them anyways, because this is a player versus everyone co-op survival element of the game. So if this cost any money to install the base game, I would remove this from my wishlist, but I would just keep it here to kind of show off, hey, in 2017 they made Orcs Must Die 1 and Orcs Must Die 2. Maybe the name is a slight problem, but I doubt it. And then they tried to make a player versus everyone co-op survival game and with a bunch of in-app purchases, and they kind of just sold out. And if we look at Robot Entertainment, they really haven't done anything else since then. Microsoft either isn't funding them or they shut them down after this. I think maybe this company got mostly dissolved amongst Microsoft. People that worked on this game very possibly are working on like Windows 10 or some background service in Microsoft instead of making games. Next we have Oregon's Trail Director's Cut, which came out 2013. I would love to play Oregon's Trail. I'm not 100% sure that this actually is Oregon's Trail. I don't think it is. Let's see. Because there's zombies in it. And that's not right. So this is kind of a parody clone of Oregon Trail. I don't think you can get the original Oregon Trail or one of the many versions out there on Steam. And it's Oregon Trail, as in body organs, not Oregon Trail as in the game, as in the state in the United States. So if I hit this, like, you have Oregon Trail Director's Cut, and then you have Orion Trail, and that's your two options. And if you just go with O Trail, you start hitting Legend of Heroes Trails of the Sky series. And if you just look for Trail, you start hitting more and more of those games. Let's see, how much is this? $2.50. Historically, it's been as low as $1.25. I'd probably wait for this to get a little bit cheaper, but I'll leave it on the wish list. I don't think this developer probably has anything else that's super interesting. Like maybe Max Gentleman is worth playing. but yeah. Let's see what Max Gentleman is. It's an arcade-style extreme manor simulator about stacking hats. Yeah, it's kind of a joke game, basically. It's free, but it has a bunch of DLC in it. I'll make sure that this is on the wish list, but I kind of only play it as a joke. I remember streamers actually playing this game, and it looked kind of crazy and silly and probably not that good. It got some mainstream coverage, which it probably didn't deserve. Moving on, we have Orphanage, which is a brand new game, so I don't really have to worry about that. Let's see. Looks like it's a top-down isometric RPG, according to the tags and what I can see. But yeah, I'll just put this on the fall list and move on. It's a dystopian life sim game where you play not as the soldiers of war, but as the children left behind. This might be one of those games that is supporting Operation War Child, which is a pretty well-known charity that works with video games. The charities that work with video game developers and publishers are kind of limited. Yeah. Okay, so it looks interesting. We'll leave it. Next we have Orwell, Ignorance is Strength, a commentary visual novel on, or simulation game on, like, people being spied upon and watched. And I think you play as a government official, yes, in an Orwell surveillance program. You can both uncover and fabricate the truth. How far will you go to serve your country? Let's see. Apparently there's a season 2. Is Ignorance is Strength the seems like, yeah, this is the sequel to another game called Orwell. So yeah. Or maybe Orwell Keeping an Eye on You is season 2. Let's see, this came out in 2016. This came out in 2018. So yeah, need to make sure that's on the wish list too. Could be very depressing and like sucky to play a game like this, certainly. So I'm not super excited to playing the Orwell series, in all honesty. See if this developer's made anything else. Nope, just those games. And has this publisher published anything else? Yeah, published quite a few different things. So maybe I could get this whole bundle. Some of these other games look like I may already own them or would want to own them. Let's see. Let's click that and move forward. Taking way too long still. Next we have Osiris New Dawn, which is mixed reviews. And so I think I can pretty quickly remove this. It's also in early access since 2016. So that sounds like it's been abandoned. This looks pretty polished. It looks kind of like a No Man's Sky-esque style of game, and perhaps like No Man's Sky, it was way too ambitious. We could go down here and see what the reviews say. Hasn't been updated in a year as far as I can tell. I've had issues for 6 months with connecting to multiplayer libraries, and issues still haven't been fixed. Let's see. Hasn't been updated since March. So yeah, this seems like an abandoned game. Easy enough to remove that. People are not happy with abandoned games, and rightfully so, particularly if it is a game that is sort of built around some online multiplayer as much as it is single player experiences. And in a weird way, even though this looks really pretty, this could be an asset flip game, or almost an asset flip game. Like, all these assets could have been purchased by other people, purchased and made by other people, and they just did a somewhat decent job of placing them in the demo sections. But then again, it also is a little ridiculous to be so afraid of purchasing and playing an asset flip game, as if that is the worst thing that could possibly happen. But yeah, regardless of what it is, people are not happy with it being abandoned, so that can be removed. Next we have Otim's Defense, which looks like a kid's platformer. It has 100% of 10 reviews. Came out in 2016, so it's probably never going to get any more reviews. So maybe it's a hidden gem, or maybe it sucks. But I guess I have to assume it's a hidden gem, because it's all just positive reviews. This game clearly didn't have enough advertisement behind it, though, because I was certainly looking at advertisements for games in 2016, and I saw nothing like this. This game looks absolutely unfamiliar. Sorry, I took a second to drink some water. Now might be a good time to pause the video yourself and take a break, although we're probably pretty close to the end. Maybe this is a game where you just run in circles fighting bosses. Maybe what we're seeing here is all the game is. That might be the case. Even at that, that's not terrible. Maybe after spending a lot of time doing game elements like this, I would say, oh, this feels more like a boss battle demo than a finished product. So it seems like you're fighting totems, and maybe more totems get added to the height as the game continues. Let's see if this developer's made anything else. No. That still looks interesting though. Leave that on the wish list. Next we have Othello, which is rated mixed, so we can take this off the wish list. I do want to play an Othello game, but I don't really see a reason to keep it on the wish list. You probably could play Othello pretty easily with Tabletop Simulator. Often it feels like Tabletop Simulator solves your problem as the one-stop shop as far as board games, unless you're playing something very specific that has very specific pieces like Ticket to Ride. But with mixed reviews, there's no reason that Othello should be on the wish list. See if this developer has made anything else of interest. They made Simply Chess, which is mostly positive. I'll look at some of these games and see if maybe they deserve to be added to the wish list. I know in the last recording I kind of looked at some games off screen, and that's counterintuitive to what I'm doing. Hive, maybe, yeah. This looks like a simplistic game that I would play if it was really cheap. And then Ket 2.0 is a laser defense game. I There's probably a better version of this game already on my wish list, but I'm not 100% certain, so I'm gonna leave that on the wish list too, or add it to the wish list. Tetsu. I've never seen a game like this, so again, I'll add it to the wish list. I'm adding more things to the wish list and taking off. And then Simple Chess is one of several different chess games that I believe are probably already on my wish list, but I'm not 100% sure which one to play. This one overall is 74% positive. It does have this premium upgrade. Next we have a game called O-U-R-E? Take flight in a dreamlike cloud space. Oh yes, I remember this game. This was an interesting game because it came out in 2017 and it got very little advertisement again. It's not really a AAA game, it's a AA game at best, maybe even a single A game, or maybe perhaps better described as a somewhat indie AA game. You fly around and you accomplish some goals, and it's interesting certainly. But yeah, nobody covered it, so it's kind of a hidden gem. Well, oddly, actually, Giant Bomb covered it. Open Critic gave it a 55. I'm not seeing any negative reviews at all on Steam. It probably was released at a pretty poor time. So yeah, you play as this kid. You can jump off and turn into a Chinese dragon. You're chasing these other characters and you're trying to stop these rampaging flying machines. And a lot of the game is just flying around and maintaining flight, because you have to be careful. You can't fly too low, you can't fly too high until you unlock some abilities. And this developer hasn't really made anything else. I guess I'm going to put this at the top of my wish list. It really is one of the few hidden gem games that I've run into so far, and we're halfway through the wish list. Next we have a game called Out of the Box, which is supposedly an RPG game. It's definitely a webcomic western animation style. I don't know what the real gameplay mechanic here is. You decide the fates of peculiar customers of a luxurious nightclub in a never-ending race against the clock. That's how it describes itself, and it's rated M, probably for dialogue. You have to choose who is in and who is out. There's actually several games like this where you just play as a bouncer, and I see what this is. This is a Papers, Please style of game, where you decide you decide who gets in and who gets out. I could see why this is on the wish list. Like, I'd want to get this and then maybe spend 30 minutes on this if it's not that great of a game, and then play Papers, Please, which is a lot better. Moving forward, we have Out There Omega Edition, which says it's a sci-fi roguelike, but it looks a lot like FTL, which is an interesting idea because a different take on FTL that's actually adding something, which this feels like it is adding something, at least in some pretty background imagery, is something I'd be willing to play. Like, I definitely don't want to go back and play FTL some more. I've had enough for a lifetime of playing that game, probably. But if somebody was going to do it a little bit different, maybe make it a little bit more easier, that would be interesting. I could get into the difference between a roguelite and a roguelike. If this truly is a roguelike, then that means all progress is lost when you die. FTL was for the most part like that, although there was a little bit of progress that you could unlock new ships if you did very specific things. I prefer in most games to play a roguelite instead of a like, but space games, I think I can make a little bit of an exception. It's not really showing you the gameplay. That's the thing I wanted to see. See, all the gameplay is just getting cut away from the footage so that they can show some review by some pretty unimportant person, some quote from an unimportant mainstream video game journalist. Well, despite the bad trailer, I want this on my wish list. I don't know if I want to put it at the top of my wish list though. I don't think so. I could play a game like this a year or two from now and it would just be better, considering. There might be some other games in a similar way, like Long Journey Home and Space Rogue seem like the same kind of games, whereas FTL is overwhelmingly positive though, and these two were mixed. I bet I don't see anything here that looks like it's something I haven't considered before though. I'd be really surprised if there's yet another game I've never thought about. Deep Sky Derelicts. Why didn't we have that on the wish list? It should be. But I don't recall seeing it. Alright, moving on then. Out There stays on the wish list. We double checked to make sure Deep Sky Derelicts is on the wish list. This game is Darkest Dungeon, but in space, basically. It seems like it might change how it plays a little bit too. Next we have the Outbreak series, which is like horror co-op survival games. And there's some weirdness here because Outbreak New Nightmare is 73% positive, but I think the other games in the series are not rated so positively. And weirder than that, so Outbreak the Nightmare Chronicles, this one is 2018, where this one is also released 2018. Let's see, January, then April, but also on top of that, there's, I believe, another game in the series. Yeah, there's a game just called Outbreak that's mixed, and it's not even in 3D. So, in all honesty, the only game I should keep on the wish list is New Nightmare. And the other game, Nightmare Chronicles, needs to get removed. Not sure particularly why it's mixed reviews, and it certainly doesn't have a lot of reviews. Maybe I looked at this game and I decided to keep it on the wish list anyways. Almost an entire clip for killing one zombie. These are, let's see. Yeah, it seems like it's kind of a Resident Evil clone. I'm gonna be really generous though and leave the Nightmare Chronicles on the wish list. but I'm not going to add the original Outbreak because, yeah, this looks a lot like Resident Evil 1 with more modern graphics, but still some major problems as far as how many bullets it takes. Yeah, it's just crazy. This is also a newer game, so it wouldn't be beyond the idea to patch it. Like, they're still working on this. But then there's also season passes and DLC. Next we have Outcast Second Contact, which I assume that there's another Outcast game. Let's see if we have a game called Outcast. There's Outcast 1.1. It's a complete remake of cult title, action adventure genre. It says. This looks like an interesting AA title game I've never heard of. I think I know Big Ben Entertainment. Maybe. I'm not sure if this is a open world run around and shoot things, Duke Nukem 3D style game, or if there's something more to it than that. There's a weird mix of what looks like alien architecture and sci-fi, so I bet you're not even on Earth. Again, there is a potential here to say that this might be just an asset flip game. Or, you know what this might very well be? Stargate. It's a ripoff of Stargate. For all the Stargate fans out there. Which, I didn't love the TV series. The movie was alright. The TV series went really long though, so it had its success. It just never really caught my attention in any of their many storylines. 17 to 20 hours is not the worst as far as the game is concerned. Let's see. Repetitive, extremely quickly, world interaction was very basic. Talking to the AIs is clunky. Combat is really boring compared to new games. The UI is really basic. So yeah, this is probably not the first pick as far as playing a game as a person who is on an alien planet. You still might do better playing something like Mass Effect 1 or 2 instead of this. But I don't think I want to remove it from the wish list either. Then I need to double check. I may already own this, and boy does that look rough. So yeah, this 2014 game, and there's something to say about this too, is that this game, which was released December 18th, 2014, is definitely at least a complete generation behind what the 2017 game version was. So it was pretty bad graphics even when it was released. Honestly, even now the graphics here don't look amazingly good for a 2017 game. Is this developer, what else have they developed? I don't think anything. They didn't even develop the original game. And Big Ben is this publisher and developer who's published some good things and a lot of things that don't interest me. I do want to play Sherlock Holmes and the Devil's Daughter, but it's gonna always be too expensive, I would guess, at least for several years. Moving on. Next we have Outlast 2. I probably already own Outlast 1. Very possibly got it for free. It's a horror survival, mostly walking simulator game is my understanding. It's rated very positively, so I'm bowing to the masses and keeping that on the wish list. Almost certainly though, if I was to play these games, I'd find very little of it scary, so it becomes a question about, is there an interesting enough story to keep my attention, or would I be bored throughout the entirety of it? How much 7 to 12 hours commitment there for a game that might not be that frightening to me. Probably won't be that frightening. Next we have Over the Hills and Far Away, which would be the beginning of a song. Let's see. It's from a company I haven't heard of before. It came out in 2015. It's 85% positive of 158 user reviews. It looks like it's a cyberpunk sort of world. Half dystopian world. The War of 1812. Well, I thought it was a cyberpunk world. I thought I saw a screen in the back, but maybe I was wrong. So, a wounded officer ends up taking refuge in a barn. He runs into this girl. It's like a historical war story. And I guess the risk is, are you gonna, playing as this character, are you going to cause her to scream for help and get you caught and killed? Don't have a lot of historical stories like this. This is a weird animation style. I would say for doing historical Civil War, War of 1812 story. It's $8.99. See if we can get any negative reviews. It's a kinetic novel set in one of the secondary theaters of the Napoleonic Wars. Let's see, do I need to read the entirety of this? If you've already read Planetarian or one of the other million novels, books about revenge with a girl in the middle used for the one purpose, just skip this because you lose nothing. Buy a soundtrack instead, which have better values. If you haven't read other novels similar to this, you'll still tell you to skip it because there are better written ones, more than anything else, far more respectful of the subject. So they don't like it because it's touching a nerve with potentially bad writing. Let's see. Our character goes from someone we best believe and understand as an underdog, a man that overcomes all odds and turns a new leaf, taking a deep plunge into a character arc that completely completes the story and leaves you with a bittersweet taste in your mouth. Instead, I get to see a coward lead a 12-year-old girl to her death. Also, he can kill someone who was completely justified in wanting to end his life, even though that is debatable since the story doesn't add up and only exists to justify the obsession. This itself is a gaping plot hole. So they're spoiling this twist here in this story already. Apparently 13 people have played this game and it takes 2 hours. So I don't know. I don't think so. Like, we have what feels like a no-name developer who hasn't made anything else. They would want $9 for 2 hours of entertainment, which is quite a lot, but not super high. Like, again, it feels like the only reason I even put this on my wish list is a forced equity attempt to just have more Western style games, Western style visual novels. So, and even in that case, this is still kind of wrong. You're still going with something that is slightly an anime style of character. That, yeah, now knowing that you play as a jerk and you end up killing this girl, I think that's enough information for me to say that yes, there are better visual novels out there. Yes, there are better, probably better historical. Maybe I should just search historical. That's an interesting thought. I bet if we look at the category of historical, it'll be a very long list of Chinese games. Yeah, this one can leave the wish list. Moving forward, there is also a idea. Yeah, there's a danger in browsing these types of games anyways, because people misuse and abuse the tags all the time. So yeah, you can play Civ games, you can play a lot of these Roman games, a lot of different types of historical games are coming up. So unless I was to narrow it even further by historical and then visual novel, which they're not even allowing you to pick as a tag, like I wouldn't even be able to find any other historical visual novels. Maybe I could search the other way and search the tag of visual novels and then see if I could narrow it by historical ones. But I was gonna say there is this idea too that even though there are a lot of anime visual novels on the wishlist, a lot of them are romance things. Like some of them definitely are violent and horrific and spooky and all of that, but a lot of them are just romance or slice of life stories, and that balances a lot of, that could balance at least a lot of games that are just you're a military person in a real-time first-person shooter, and you're just going to shoot a million other military people that come running towards you, or you're a survivalist shooting millions and millions of zombies. There's a lot of violence in games, and visual novels is the one genre I would say that more than any other genre curves that cliche and goes in different directions. Next we have Overcooked, so we're pretty close to the end. I'm gonna keep Overcooked on the wish list. It's rated very positively at 91%. But in all honesty, Overcooked 1 and probably Overcooked 2, which is also on my wish list, I'm sure, it's a multiplayer game, and so if you try to play it as a single player experience, I don't think you're gonna have the greatest of experience. You can play it in single player, but I don't think you get much of much fun out of that. At best, I mean, at worst, you probably need at least one other player, but generally speaking, you want 4 people. And most of the people that I've seen that have had fun with Overcooked, it's from people playing in groups of 4. It's from Team 17, the developers of the Worms series, like Worms World Party. So that's another like multiple player party style game. And then next we have Overcooked 2. Same thing, just leave it on the wish list. 72% positive. I kind of wish some of these games would just get rid of the single player function completely, because you really aren't going to have a much of an experience. If somebody was to gift me these games, I almost certainly would do like a 30-minute spotlight and thank the person that gifted it to me very much, but that's kind of where it would go. It's just 30 minutes of coverage, and I really couldn't say too much about it. I don't think there's really too much to say, except for getting into like nitty-gritty game, how the game responds. Next we have Overgrowth, which is a martial arts sandbox game. So you're playing as this rabbit ninja character that fights in martial arts people. It's a weird one. It seems like it's probably for people who are obsessed with anthropomorphic rabbits and have some weird love of that concept. And I'm not 100% sure that any game can really do martial arts very well. This trailer we're seeing sees the main character do martial arts very, very good, but I'm not 100% sure I actually trust the game to play smoothly in most scenarios. This developer, let's see what else they made. A game called Receiver where you're just running around with a gun that has like one bullet at a time, and so you have to be very careful to use the gun. And then they have this other game, Lagaru HD, that's from 2005, and it's basically the same as Overgrowth. It's just way older and less likely to work well. So they took this concept and then they brought it back and put a lot more polish on it in a second attempt. I'm not sure I really frown on the idea of somebody coming back and trying to remake their game that didn't play very well from several years prior. Most game developers don't have the money to do that, or the intention or desire to do that, and most companies just give up on an idea and move on to the next idea. It almost makes a company feel like they don't have any new ideas if they remake an old game, particularly if you're changing the name. It would have been better to just call it the Lagaru HD remaster or a Lagaru remaster and take the HD out. Next we have Overkill's The Walking Dead, which is in development and it's not out yet, so this might be the last good Walking Dead game. It might be the last Walking Dead game, with the slight exception of the Telltale game series. Theoretically that's going to wrap up, but we're not 100% certain that actually will happen. I'm not, at least. I wouldn't be surprised by this time next year if we don't have any Walking Dead games or TV series. There might be one TV series still airing by this time next year, but I'm suspecting at least one of them will be canceled, and I don't think anybody else is going to license it and make any more games. Inherently, it's kind of ridiculous that so many games were licensed in the first place, because Walking Dead is just zombies. Anybody can make a zombie game. They're not going to get sued for copyright infringement over the concept of a zombie. This is a first-person shooter multiplayer co-op game, according to the tags. As we're watching the videos, you can see the graphics here are a lot better than what you would get in a Telltale story. It's also kind of weird that none of the Walking Dead games tried to just tell the story of the comic book or the TV series directly, and maybe that would be a slight reason why a couple more of them would get made, is if the TV series was finished, they would immediately try to remake it as an interactive video game. But I doubt that would happen either. See, I'm not 100% sure you play just as this one character in the game as we're watching this trailer. We need to just move forward. Yeah, this is on the fall list. I will definitely consider playing it. There might be another Walking Dead game actually in development, but I'm pretty sure there's not 3. Next we have OVIVO, which is a minimalistic 2D platformer. It's rated 91% positive of 188 user reviews. I think this can stay on the wish list. I don't think there's anything too special about it, but I like the minimalistic art style, and I'm hoping that it's not too difficult to actually play and doesn't get into the realm of something like a Super Meat Boy platformer. There was another game where gravity seemed to go backwards and forwards, and you would jump through the translations that I removed from the wishlist because it was 2 characters playing. This feels a little bit more controllable, but also this might be annoying. Certainly, it would really come down to how long do you play this game. 1 to 2 hours. I'm willing to put 1 and 2 hours of frustration into a game like this. If it was a 5 to 10 hour game, I might consider not playing it at that point. Of course, then 1 to 2 hours at $2.50 is still asking a lot of money, at least for me. I'm a pretty cheap gamer. I want to get things very, very cheap. And that is that. So that is all the games that we covered with O, that started with the letter O. It was a longer journey than it probably needed to be. We looked at every single game when, in all honesty, things that were rated very positively, I could have just said, okay, that's staying on the wish list. There very well may be a case where I run into a game that, or a letter in the wish list where there's only like 5 or maybe even no reviews. I wouldn't be surprised if there's only one thing that starts with Q, or maybe nothing that starts with X, or nothing that starts with Y. Actually, there will be several things that start with Y because the Yeez series starts with Y at least. Maybe nothing that starts with Z. So we may run into a situation like that. Anyways, that's it for this episode. I ask at the end of my episodes always that you like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos, because that helps me with YouTube and tells them that my videos are worth watching. If you want to friend or follow me on things like Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Google+, Steam, or Battle.net, all of those links are down below in the description box. And I do ask that you friend me on Steam, because one of the ways you can support me is by friending me on Steam and then gifting me a game, whether it's a game off the wishlist or just a game in general you'd like to see me cover. Or if you don't want to make a decision, you can also gift gift cards. Or if you want to support me in a more monetary fashion, you can support me directly through Patreon, and that might be a little bit quicker of a process. That's it for this recording. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.